questions, will ask you to introduce yourself and can you tell why you decided to study political science?
Yeah, my name's Jeffrey Waring. I've lived here in South Dakota for the past 10 years, and I'm from a fairly large family, and I decided to study political science because I've always been fascinated by the way the US government works, and I'm interested in maybe looking for some internships in state or federal government coming up.
Oh wow, that's so good. I like your story. So, what is your favorite media source and where do you usually get news?
I don't really have a favorite media source. Most of my news comes from just passively seeing headline stories on social media and a few YouTube videos I'll watch every once in a while if I have extra time on my hands.
So, how often do you check news? Is it like daily habit or you just do it once a week?
It depends on the time and how busy I am. Sometimes I'll check every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Other times it drops down to once or twice a month, but for the most part I check 2 times a week.
Okay, so did you notice that it's more often than other students? Because as I see, like students, they don't study political science, they just do it like for fun and very rare, like not often.
That makes sense to me. Sometimes I'll find a story that I'm really interested in and I'll check to keep up with that. There was a very high profile trial that caught my attention, and that was when it peaked, checking once or twice a day.
So how do you think, what is the reason that some of young generation, they just not as interested as should be?
I think people tend to get caught up in stuff that's going on in their own lives and stop looking at things that are happening out in the broader world. So who cares what's happening on the other side of the country? It doesn't affect me immediately, so there's no point. That would be my guess at what the thinking is.
Okay, I got it. So next question, how do you think, where is more reliable information for you, television or the internet?
I think that fact-wise, I think television tends to have more accurate facts, but I think television is more extreme, can be more extreme politically. So the facts they give you will be accurate, but the facts will be more well selected to frame a narrative.
Okay, so I just noticed that a lot of Americans, they watch TV way more than in Russia, because in young generation we never open even TV. How often do you watch TV?
I don't watch TV, cable TV, live stuff very often. I watch recreationally on streaming services more than I should. I'm usually on every day, but the amount of time varies from 10 minutes while I'm doing the dishes to 2 hours while I'm procrastinating working on a school project.
Yeah, I have same. Can you remember some events in the US history when media presented it in the wrong way?
I can think of a few where the way they were presented were skewed to the point where it wasn't useful.
What was it?
What specific cases or?
Yeah. If you remember.
I know that during the Russia hoax, or not Russian hoax, but Russian collusion case with Trump was a big one. I think it was very skewed. I think there may have been some evidence and it was a valid line of thought, but I think it wasn't a useful study. And then I think most news is moved too far politically by the way they want to phrase it for it to be completely consistent.
Okay. Next question, do you have the same views as your family and do you share media sources with each other?
I am very close politically with my family. I'm starting to drift farther away from the way my parents are thinking. As I'm in college, I'm starting to drift farther. We don't deliberately share news sources, but we all consume the same or similar media.
So, do you think it's the reason that if you grew up in like one family, you will have kind of similar views politically?
I think that growing up in a very politically aware family will strongly determine where you start on certain ideas, but I think once you interact with more in the world, it doesn't affect too much where you will eventually end up. I think that when you have a strong opinion to begin with, you are more able to find where your beliefs actually lie.
I wanted to ask also about social media. Which media do you use the most, and do you find just social media information trustworthy sources?
My social media that I use the most, I use Instagram a lot.
Me too.
I also have Twitter and Facebook, but I don't use those near as much. I think of the three, Twitter I think would have the most reliable, but I don't trust any of it particularly.
What was your attitude when Elon Musk bought a Twitter? How did you react? It's like, wow, that's too much. Was it not enough? Like all that you have?
I don't think it was not enough. I think that at the very most extreme, it was what was needed. I am very curious to see what he does with it. I think if he does what he says he wants to and opens up the platform for free speech, then I think it will be a benefit. If he kind of reneges on his statements and begins censoring either side, then I think overall it would be a negative. I think it would have been better for it to be in the hands of more shareholders if it is going to censor certain types of speech, it is better for it to be held by shareholders rather than one person.
Now I want to ask you a couple of questions about elections. So, have you ever voted?
I was unable to vote in this election, no.
Oh, so you didn't?
No, I did not. I paid attention to the vote, to the campaigns and stuff. I wasn't able to make it.
So just imagine if you would vote.
Yeah.
Did you have like your initial decision? Could it change during pre-election period and propaganda, or that was same?
I knew which candidate I was immediately favoring. I think, and by the end of the campaign, I would have still voted with that candidate. I think that had the other candidate I like to believe that had the other candidate made sufficient arguments, I would have been willing to change my vote.
Do you usually believe in information from American news channels about other countries?
I think that on the rare occasion that American news channels talk about other countries, I think they're going to be fairly accurate. I think they will always spin towards that news channel's preferred political preference, even when discussing foreign nations.
Okay, so what about European sources? Do you usually read them to check information or not?
I don't often check European sources. I do have one or two sources that are American that I glance at more often than all the others, but for the most part, I take the stories at face value, and then don't trust them anyway. But
okay, so how do you think, why are most of Americans so isolated from the world news and follow news of domestic politics?
I think it goes back to something similar to what I said at the beginning, where why younger kids aren't paying attention to the news as much. People like living in their own bubble, and they like to believe that anything they see on news regarding the outside world, outside of America, and news in general, that it won't affect their lives directly, and that it'll be this far off thing that you'll hear your grandkids talking about in the history books, but it won't affect you directly.
So you think if America's economics was not that strong or had some problems, they would pay more attention what was going on outside? And when you live like in super perfect conditions, not perfect conditions, but you know, better and strong and probably stable than other countries, so you would more focused on domestic politics?
Yes, I think that if America was in a position where it had to rely on other nations more, I think Americans would be more interested in foreign policy.
Just involved in this process,
yeah,
right?
Where since America has been in such a powerful economic position for so long, the current generations of Americans have grown up where they don't need to worry about other countries as much.
Okay, I know that these questions will not be relevant for apolitical people, but since you study political science, let me ask you this. Do you try to surround yourself people with the same political views as yours, or it doesn't matter for you?
I don't actively seek out people with the same political views that I do. Because of the way I have studied political science and the conditions of South Dakota and this region, I have surrounded myself with people with similar beliefs as me who are politically active. I did not intentionally seek people out who are
politically. Like it's accidentally
yeah.
You're kind of same.
As when I tried to learn about government and interact politically, I've naturally run into more people with the same beliefs that I do.
Do you feel some, because I feel like when I talk to apolitical people, I have some like lack of understanding, because if they're not interested in it, you just can't even share because they just don't care what is happening.
Yeah, when I talk to people who don't think about politics at all, most people think about it a little bit, so you can talk to them some. But for people who don't care about politics in any way, it's really hard to create conversation about the things I find interesting. I spend my free time thinking about where would I put the US Capitol if I got to randomly move it, and
oh, wow.
just random things that could affect policy. And however, for people who don't care about politics at all, I have to put that part of my those ideas aside. And you're right, it's hard to talk about politics or anything with them because our views on life are so different, and the context we view things in. So.
Okay, and the last question, so same questions about celebrities, artists, and musicians. So what if your favorite musician will say something against your values, like completely against, and if it is about some important political issues or like they keep silence, would you continue to follow them, to follow and listen like to their songs or admire them regardless of their opinion, or it is connected for you?
I think I don't listen to songs because I agree politically with the people who write them. I don't read a book because the author said something off script in a random news interview that I think was really important. I listen to music because I think it sounds nice, and I read a book because the story's interesting.
So it is separate things.
Yeah.
Like if the creator thinks in a different way, his like I don't know, music, songs, books that he read, it's just separate for you.
Yeah, I think it's separate. If the political views are present in the songs or the books, then it is something that I would connect. But so long as politics doesn't interfere with the content, then I try to keep it separate.
Yeah, because in my country, in Russia, so right now it's just like it is happening really strict cancel culture. If you don't say anything on current news, it means that we will not like, we'll just cancel all your things that you did. So that was kind of I was kind of curious how it is here. So you usually separate it, right?
I try to, yeah.
Okay, thank you so